Right, hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to our new semester, and hello to you too,
Hello.
Anthony.
Hello, how are you?
Good. We hope you're all well. And this is the start of our new semester, the first lesson about the wisdom of Kabbalah. Now, as your instructors, my name is. Let me just write that down. It's a bit tricky. Mutlu Marty.M.Meydan. Now, my friends call me Mutlu, so if you can manage that, great. Worst case scenario, you got my middle name, Marty. And together with me, we have Anthony.
Hello, Anthony Parker. Nice to meet you all.
Okay, great. And today what we're going to do is going to start walking into this wisdom, this deep wisdom called the wisdom of Kabbalah. And you're probably wondering, or if you did a Google search on Kabbalah, you'll see that there are a lot of things about the wisdom of Kabbalah. Some mystical, some with red strings, some with yoga, all kinds of things from black magic to yoga, like I said, or mysticism or meditation. And this wisdom is actually 5,777 years old. So during the course, we'll get to know where this wisdom comes from and what it can really do to help us in our lives. Because at the end of the day, what we're really interested in is to learn something and to attain something that will kind of get us life through with an understanding, with a bit more easier flow. And given all the international events and the personal events that we're going through globally, we're all seeking actually some sort of wisdom to kind of put us through life in an easier way. And this is actually what this wisdom does. And the wisdom of Kabbalah, we're going to talk about it in the way that it was first authentically developed. So in terms of coming to this course, you're actually going to go into some of the sources that are really authentic from really thousands of years old. Now, a little about us. If you haven't read anything about B'nai Baruch, you can always go to our website, kabbalah.info, to find out what our organization is about and how we work. It's a non-profit organization, and all the work we do is pretty much voluntary. And the whole idea of giving these courses actually to open this wisdom to people who feel that they might use it in their lives, to make their lives a bit easier and to make life a little bit more understandable. And I've been studying this wisdom for 16 years, and I've been teaching for over, nearly 8 years now, over 7 years. And I teach in various classes. I teach all over the world as well, to the United States, to South America, North America, Australasia, now Europe and Africa as well. And I also teach in the Middle East as well. So I've been teaching for quite a long time, and as we progress, I'm hoping that you'll find this course useful. And the beautiful thing is we're going to have an interactive lesson. So this is a very interactive course. And if you have any questions during the lesson, you can just ask through the chat box that you have on the website as you're watching. And if you have any queries, questions about what Kabbalah is, we're happy to take them on board. Now, we have 10 lessons ahead of us, and these 10 lessons are going to be quite interesting because we're not just going to discover what this wisdom is all about, but we're going to discover how thousands of years ago people wrote about the perception of reality, how they thought about and discovered and wrote about our free choice. Do we have any free choice? What our nature is, what the nature of creation is, and all these things that they discovered and felt and attained, they wrote in these special books called the books of Kabbalah. And the most mystical thing about Kabbalah is, in case you're wondering, it's that it's been kept a secret for many years. In fact, for thousands of years, it was never clear what this wisdom was all about. So in this first lesson, what we're going to do is going to define what the wisdom of Kabbalah is. We're going to take a look at how we can study it together, how we can learn, and how we can carry on learning even beyond this first semester that we're going to go through. Now, hopefully you'll stick around with us over the duration of these 10 lessons, and then we'll have a second semester where we'll be able to get into more practical side of things. So this first semester is going to be really all the fundamentals, the building blocks, and the knowledge that we're going to really need to kind of build ourselves, and we want to build an approach to how to study this wisdom, because it is a bit tricky, and because it's been misunderstood for thousands of years. There are so many definitions about it, so many varieties of things related to it, but we need to really nail it and make sure we get the right definitions, so that the wisdom of Kabbalah from our perspective can guide us according to a very practical methodological application. And that's what we're going to do. So during the course we'll be studying a few things that are really actually going to be important for us in our day-to-day lives as well. We're going to discover how we actually perceive reality. And if you think about it, science is now discovering all these things about how we live reality inside our minds. Imagine 2,000 years ago people writing about this, and humanity didn't know about it. So these texts are quite authentic, and it's a quite authentic science. And we call it the wisdom of Kabbalah because it is a science, and it's something that a person gradually, as he studies or she studies, can attain, and through that attainment can see the whole of reality from a different perspective. So hopefully we'll get a glimpse of that, and our first lesson is going to be basically defining the wisdom of Kabbalah. Before we carry on though, the book that we're going to use is called Kabbalah for the Student. Okay, it's this book here. Now, if you like books, this is you can get one, and our website for that is kabbalahbooks.info. So let me just write this down here as well. If you're interested in getting books, kabbalahbooks.info. All our books are there. But if you're not a bookworm, or if you prefer to read on your mobile or your iPad, whatever, you can always go to the website as well, which is kabbalah.info, and there you can pretty much find all the articles in this book there. You can just download it, read it, it's all free. Okay, all our books on the website, they're all in their PDF format, or as separate articles. So you can go in there and read the whole article, because we're not going to have, within the duration of 1.5 hours, we're not going to have enough time to finish articles, and some of them are quite long. So what we'll do is we'll use excerpts from articles, but it's always a good idea to go in there and read the article for yourself as well, to clarify the matters for yourself. And also, if you have any questions afterwards, you can always raise them in the next lesson, and we can answer them as well. So it is a bit of a thick book, but there are a lot of information in there, and those articles that are in there are actually enough for us to really come to a spiritual elevated state if we learn from them, and if we take from them what we do, how we work, and how we can apply the wisdom of Kabbalah. So we'll get smashing, and I have read some of the notes from people there. I do believe we have quite a lot of people from all over the place, from Africa, South Africa, Nigeria,
Very exciting.
England, okay, Ghana. So we have a lot of friends from Africa,
Ghana,
and
Tanzania, Mauritius, Zimbabwe, Somalia, and also England.
Great. And I think they're going to be translating these lessons to several languages for the Europeans that want to see them in their language as well. So today we're going to have a lot of translations, I think, into Portuguese, Slovakian, German, and Scandinavian languages, and so on. So these will be also, if you speak another language, if your mother tongue is not English, you might be able to find their translations as well later on, after the lesson has been recorded and archived. And all the lessons will be archived, so if you miss any lesson, don't panic. You'll be able to go back and you'll be able to watch everything again, and you can watch them multiple times, you can download them, and so on. So it's all free. You can study as you go. So it's going to be nice and comfortable, and feel free to interact. And later on, as we go through, we're going to use a special software called Zoom, where we'll be able to actually see each other on the screen as well. So right now you guys can only see me, but it's really great to have students also join in later on with the software, so we can all interact much better. All right there, so let's get smashing. and then we'll see how we go. So first of all, let's define the wisdom of Kabbalah. Now, if you did a Google search, like I said, you probably came across a lot of definitions about the wisdom of Kabbalah, and there are a lot of things out there. People try to make it look like black magic. They try to sell you red strings and holy water. They try to do yoga poses according to Kabbalah, and there are, a variety of things. However, the wisdom of Kabbalah, in a nutshell, is basically understanding human nature, understanding the nature that we're in, and also understanding why all the problems we have, the reason for all the problems, the reason for creation, why we were created. So this is a science that really discovers that magical, well, not magical, but that deep question that humanity has been asking for itself for thousands of years. What is the meaning of life? And you will discover as we go along that meaning of life is not in red strings or drinking holy water, as some Kabbalah organizations sell. No, it's not by doing yoga poses with Kabbalistic I don't know what. And it's not black magic. I mean, I'm 46 years old. I've traveled the world quite a bit, lived in all over the place, lived on 4 continents actually, and I have never seen any magical things, especially not black magic. So as adults with a sound mind, I think we can all come to an evaluation here that there are certain things that are just not going to happen in the world. So all those things, Kabbalah maybe, according to somebody, is related to, but according to the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah, it is a science based on discovering the purpose of life, why we're created, who created us, why he or she, nature let's call it, created us, and what does life want from us. So all these things we need to discover in order for us to have a healthy life. Because as you see in our lives, we're going through a lot of problems at an individual level, at a societal level, at a global level. And we can't seem to get out of this loop that for centuries of years, humanity has been just going through, one drama after another, a lot of suffering all around the world, and we just can't seem to come to a resolution. So this wisdom actually really helps us to bring all those things together, and it allows us to solve all the issues from a different perspective. So if we understand what this wisdom is all about and how to apply it, we can actually solve all of our personal problems, societal problems, and global problems. The whole idea is to stick around, to learn it, and to apply it, and to move forward with it. It is a deep ocean of a wisdom, but as time goes on, we'll discover it together. So it's not a difficult wisdom either. Okay, so I don't want to scare you. It's a very, very practical wisdom. It's applicable. Anyone who can study it, anyone can study it, and you don't need any special talents or special, you don't need a high level of IQ to study it. Anybody who really wishes to study this wisdom can learn it, and it's very practical and simple to learn. So let's start with some definitions from Baal HaSulam. Now we're going to, let me actually, before we start, let me give you also our sources, how we study and from which sources we study. Now our group, B'nai Baruch, studies Kabbalah according to the sources of Rav Yehuda Ashlag, who is known as Baal HaSulam. Baal HaSulam means the owner or the master of the ladder. And this Kabbalist was the most prominent of the previous century, and he's known for his work, and he got this name, Baal HaSulam, the owner of the ladder, because he wrote a commentary on the book called the Zohar. So our foundations are from a book called Zohar that dates back to more than 2,000 years. And he also made a commentary on a book called The Tree of Life. And no other Kabbalist has done that since that book has been written, and that was like 500 years ago. So if you think about it, he's a very, very prominent Kabbalist who actually brought authentic sources, and he arranged them and he organized them in such a way that we can actually read them. Because if you think about it, how could we delve into something written 2,000 years ago without having any idea about what it's talking about? Even the language is so different. I mean, if you think about the English they were using 50 years ago and what we're using now as English, it's like very different. So imagine all those years, we'd never be able to get into those books. So Baal Sulam did us a big favor, and he arranged all the authentic books that we need to study in order to attain this wisdom. Plus, he wrote a lot of articles. So for any new person, any beginner in the 21st century can come in, and just from those basic articles, he can begin to enter this wisdom. So our methodology is based on the teachings of Rav Yehuda Ashlag, and that teaching actually dates back to thousands of years ago. And the second source we use is Rav Baruch Ashlag's sources. And Baruch Ashlag was the teacher of our teacher, Dr. Michael Lightman, and he wrote a lot of articles which we use for our practical work. Now, before Baruch Ashlag, we also call him Rabash. So you should get used to that name, Rabash. When you hear Rabash, it's Baruch Ashlag. And he wrote a lot of articles that gave us the ability to understand what we need to do in a practical way. Because Kabbalists actually never wrote about how to do this work practically. All their books described the spiritual worlds, spiritual meaning a higher level of consciousness. And this is why they wrote all their books, to teach people that there's a higher level of reality, and that reality is all in their books. But how to attain that was done by Rav Baruch Ashlag, also known as Rabash. And because he's the teacher of our teacher, Dr. Michael Lightman, and he set up this organization called Bnei Baruch, means the sons of Baruch. Okay, Bnei Baruch means the sons of Baruch, and that's where this Baruch comes from. All right, so we're going to study only those sources, and those sources are based on the Zohar and the Tree of Life. And all the articles that these two great Kabbalists wrote are only to guide us into the depth of the wisdom. So let's start by going through some of the definitions that Baal Islam wrote for us about what this wisdom is really all about. So on day one, we can really clarify for ourselves and understand what this wisdom means, and we can clean everything else in our heads from any other website that you wrote. So we're going to read from an article called The Essence of the Wisdom of Kabbalah. It's in this book, and you can also find it on our website, kabbalah.info. And you can read the whole article from there. So let's take a look at what he says. Baal Sulam from Kabbalah for the Student, The Essence of the Wisdom of Kabbalah. This is from page 21. The wisdom is no more and no less than a sequence of roots which hang down by way of cause and consequence by fixed, determined rules, interweaving into a single exalted goal described as the revelation of the Creator to his creatures in this world. Now that definition within itself might need a bit of explanation, so we need to delve into it. Basically, Baal Islam is saying this wisdom can get you to perceive the Creator, or this creating force, call it God, nature, a higher force, it doesn't matter what you call it. At the end of the day, when we are born in this world, we feel like, we're born here and we understand that we didn't create this reality. So we have an instinctive feeling that somebody, some force or something created this reality. And Baal Islam in this definition, he's telling us that if we do this spiritual work, we can actually come to sense that higher force and attain a higher level of conscious living. And from this definition, we can understand also what he's trying to say with respect to how our lives are being lived here. So he's saying this whole wisdom is about discovering the cause of everything and the consequence. And he divides those two realities into two. So there's a place called cause or causes, and he names them as the roots. So this is where everything that happens in life, or the system of nature, or call it destiny, fate, whatever, everything that happens here to us, to this world, in this reality, are based on causes, which he calls roots. And let's read it again. This wisdom is no more and no less than the sequence of roots which hang down by way of cause and consequence. So these roots are influencing our reality and causing a consequence. So whatever happens in this world, in our reality, in the way we see things, has a reason. And that reason stems from a higher level, which we don't perceive at the moment. So what else is he saying? By fixed, determined rules. So there's a cause and consequence relationships. There is a rule. Whatever happens here as a cause, let's say something happened here, it is reflected in our reality, let's call it our world, as an event. So nothing can actually happen without a cause. Everything in life. What else does he tell us here? They're interweaving to a single exalted goal, described as the revelation of the Creator to his creatures in this world. Therefore, everything that happens here to us, to everyone, to the whole universe, has only one reason. And that is to bring us to the revelation of the Creator. Now, in Kabbalah, we don't use the word God or anything that's religious. We use the word Creator. The reason they use the word Creator is simply because Kabbalists are very scientific and pragmatic guys. So they don't want to believe in something they haven't seen. So when they look at life, they understand that, well, we're created, because I didn't create myself, it's obvious, and we live here, and this whole creation is somehow was created. So a logical person comes to the conclusion that, okay, there must be a force, something, a creator that created this reality, and obviously us too, because we're stuck in it. We get born here, and nobody really asks us if we want to get born here. We're just born, and we don't really have much of a choice but to live it out. So any person asking about the meaning of life starts to stumble across these questions. Well, who created me? Well, why are we created? What's the purpose of all the suffering that we're going through in life and then ending up dead? It doesn't really make sense to us. So the fundamental question about what the meaning of life is, what the purpose of life is, that question is found, is answered in this wisdom. And in his definition here, he is describing us that if we discover all the causes, then we can understand all the consequences that happen here. And through that understanding, we can actually attain a higher level of consciousness. And that higher level of consciousness is actually called the Creator. So the Creator is not like some guy that you might imagine up on the clouds like Father Christmas, but it's actually a thought, a perception that we need to attain, and we need to be integrated into reality at a much higher level of consciousness than the state we're living in right now. Because if we look at our lives right now, it's a big mess. We really don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, Our whole life is uncertainty. It's all based on uncertainties. Nobody knows when something good's going to happen, when something bad's going to happen, and usually it's negative, the things that happen. And the world seems to be going from bad to worse all the time. The wars never stop. In total 5,000 or 6,000 years of our history, in recorded history, I think there's only been like 560 or 550 years where there was no war. But besides that, we have always had wars, conflicts, and all the agony and the suffering that's been brought along by it. So we have this vicious circle that we're going through. It's like it's this mess of a loop that humanity is going through. And through this tremendous suffering experience, we come to this question about what is the meaning of my life? Why am I living? So this wisdom from the time of Adam, which we'll go into the history of Kabbalah, don't worry about it, but this wisdom actually comes from Adam, so it predates all religions, and it has nothing to do with religion at all, actually, so it really is a science. Sometimes people confuse it and say it's Jewish mysticism. First of all, there's nothing mystical about science. It needs to be attained by the person who's studying it. Second of all, there's nothing mystical about Judaism either. Judaism is, in our modern days, it's a religion, and Kabbalah has nothing to do with religion. It, like I said, predates religion, and we'll get into it much deeper along the way. It's really interesting as well how Kabbalah developed and then how religions came out. So in the ongoing lessons, when we discuss these, you find it really interesting how humanity has evolved through this teaching and started developing things that were just simply not true, some kind of a philosophy. And if you look at life right now as well, religion is basically that as well. It's just dry belief, nothing concrete behind it. And this wisdom will give us that concrete standing because it's a wisdom that a person can relate to everything he or she is going through in life. And as emotional creatures, we're going through a lot of emotions, and we can't decipher why we're going through the things we're going through. So this science, this wisdom is actually about ourselves. And what's more important than that, actually, trying to understand everything that's happening to us. Since it's our life, we want to discover why things happen to us and for what reason. So many of the things we go through during the day, we just wonder, well, why did that need to happen? Why me? I mean, I'm sure if you've asked yourselves this question many times in life, when something bad happens, you say, well, why me? Well, there's a good answer to that. Why not? Okay, because there are 7 billion, 8 billion people on the planet, and we're all going through it. And we need to understand why we're going through the things we're going. Otherwise, we're just going to be passing our lives like animals, like beaten animals, actually, like animals in captivity, suffering, and then we just end up dead, trying to do all our efforts to stay alive and to have a good life as best we can, but never really achieving what we want. And then by the time you know it, everything goes by in a blink of an eye. As my grandmother used to say, and she died at like 90 odd, she had a long life, and she used to say, you know what, I don't understand how life went by so quick. It feels like yesterday when I was a teenager, and now it's like, I don't know what happened. So our lives go by very fast, and Kabbalists advise us to really study this wisdom so we can really understand why we're going through everything that we're going through. And the reason actually this wisdom was hidden for thousands of years was because humanity wasn't really asking this question about the meaning of life. There were a few people here and there who wanted to know why, and they were mostly Kabbalists. They became Kabbalists afterwards, and they kept the wisdom going on for centuries from teacher to student. But the masses, the real humanity, they didn't really have a need to ask this question. Common people weren't asking this question. But in the 21st century, we see this massive leap in humanity where we're actually sick and tired of this corporeal loop that we're living in. And a lot of people are now asking why we're living, what's the meaning of life. And this is why since 1990s, a lot of spiritual methods have been popping up. Before, in the 80s, I grew up in the 80s, and there weren't so many, spiritual methods, spirituality, and all this kind of stuff. We weren't really that interested. But come the 90s, it was like a whole new generation of humanity wanting to know something beyond our lives. So meditations, all these books about the power of thought, many books, many methods came to light, because people were just searching. And if humanity doesn't search, things don't come out. So those who search, those who seek, find things according to their desire. And the wisdom of Kabbalah really became a focal point in the 21st century. Even in the 1990s, it wasn't really a wisdom that people were interested in. But in the 21st century now, a lot of people are wondering what this wisdom is all about. And rightfully so, because it really answers that question, why am I living? Who created me, and what for, and what I need to do about it? So let's just read this definition one more time, now that we've had an explanation about it, and then it'll sink in, and then we can carry on. This wisdom is no more and no less than a sequence of roots which hang down by way of cause and consequence by fixed, determined rules, interweaving to a single exalted goal described as the revelation of the Creator to his creatures in this world. One other thing we can add to this is, when we're talking about the Creator, we really need to get into the habit of thinking about the laws of nature. Because Creator is not something that, if you grew up in any religion or in a religious method, you really want to clean that definition out. You want to take it out. You want to start with a fresh page if you're studying Kabbalah. The word Creator here means basically, from all the causes and consequences, all the events of this world, is to understand the thought behind what's happening. And this is what it means to understand the Creator. Because to understand the Creator is one thing. Having like, it's in a family, right? Having a dad is one thing, but understanding your dad, that's a different thing. And here as well, Kabbalists want to give us a methodology. They want to open up this wisdom to us so we can really attain the thought behind everything. And that's called that higher level of existence, which actually makes us free from this corporeal restricted body that we're in. That we define ourselves as this body right now. However, Kabbalists say that we're not this piece of meat, this sack of protein, but we're actually destined for a higher level of existence, which we don't feel at the moment. We just feel our lives in this 5 levels of perception with our 5 sensory organs. And once we get old, or once I don't know what else can happen in life, accidents can happen, anything, until we die, we just feel life in these 5 senses. And according to these 5 senses, we either feel good or bad. And that's our life. We strive for the good, run away from the bad. We try to have everything good as best we can. Usually ends up in disappointment. And from there on, from all the disappointments and the restrictions of our lives here, we begin to ask, why are we living? So from there on, we need to understand that this word Creator needs to take on a new definition when we're studying Kabbalah. And the whole purpose of this wisdom is to attain the thought of the Creator and to understand all the actions that are done in this reality, so we can actually begin to format ourselves, give ourselves a new perspective, a new way, a new perception of reality, so we can live beyond the borders of our corporeal existence. And for that, we're going to have to develop a new sensory organ. Call it the sixth sense, call it the soul, doesn't matter what. But the whole idea of creation is to attain everything while we live in this world. So some people believe that something will happen after we die. Nothing will happen after we die. Everything must happen here while we are alive. And that's the whole purpose of the creation of this world. So this world is a stepping stone for us to attain a new level of reality, and therefore everything needs to happen while we're alive here. So if you have any if you have any thoughts about something that might happen after we die or whatever, in the wisdom of Kabbalah, no, we must do it here. As the definition also says, in the last part, the revelation of the Creator to his creatures in this world. We are the creatures, and we need to reveal the acting force behind reality, and we need to adapt ourselves to that force while living in this world. Right, then up to here, let's see. Do we have any questions? Are we interactive?
We had some questions, but you basically answered them. One was why it was from Ranel from South Africa. He asked, why was it kept secret? You spoke about that.
That's a good question. Let's go into it a bit more deeper.
Okay.
Why was the wisdom of Kabbalah a secret for many, many years? It's very simple. If I have a child and I want to give him a wisdom, but I understand that he can't handle it right now, he's not capacitated enough to understand it, I don't want to open it to him because it will cause confusion. So what Kabbalists did was very simple. They said, look, we'll develop this wisdom from generation to generation. We'll only open it to a few individuals who are really mature enough to take care of it, who are really wanting to discover the meaning of life. And they feel that this is their life's purpose. And we'll only hand it down to those and we'll keep it a secret until maturity of the whole of humanity becomes mature enough and is wondering why we're living, so we can open it up a bit more. And Baal Salam, rightfully so, he mentioned it, that he wrote these articles like 70, 80, even 100 years ago. He wrote many articles describing how the whole of the human society, how the whole world was so integrated with globalization. Now we started talking about globalization in the 80s, but he wrote about it like in the 1900s, and like 1920s, 30s, and he says that the whole world is so integrated, so integral, and the whole world is in such a connected situation that the next level of humanity will have to be finding out and discovering how to integrate correctly so that we can move to a higher level of living, higher level of existence. And all our problems in the world is because we don't know how to really integrate our lives properly with everybody else. So he wrote about these things, and he could foresee that humanity was really cooking, and it was becoming ripe to start asking questions. And in fact, in one of his articles, he says, they'll start to study my books in 1995, and that's actually when B'nai Baruch was established in 1995. So he created all the material, he wrote all the articles, put the books together, because he understood that this generation was going to start asking questions, and that the level of development in human society had now come to a point where people would seek this wisdom. So Kabbalists, rightfully so, kept it so that humanity, who wasn't ready for it at the time, wouldn't get confused. From some of the students of Kabbalah in the past who had no attainment about the wisdom, developed philosophies. Many of the philosophers, Greek philosophy, actually came out from those who studied Kabbalah but didn't really attain the essence of the wisdom of Kabbalah. So humanity already went through a lot of misunderstandings thousands of years ago, and Kabbalists, seeing that this misunderstanding was going to cause even more great suffering to humanity, they just kept it a secret, because once you have a student who studies something and he gets things wrong and messed up, then he starts talking about it in a completely unrelated and a wrong way. And this is how philosophy developed. And what is philosophy actually? Philosophy is a person's imagination of how things could be good without actually living that state. So philosophy was just basically human imagination of what could be great for us. And every time we try to implement those philosophies, the world just went into more and more corruption, more and more difficulties. So if we had actually kept ourselves without philosophy and had just developed on a scientific, concrete basis, we would have been much better off. We wouldn't have all these trial and error as we have in history. So all the political systems came about through what? It was all philosophy. Communism, neo-Nazism, the feudal system. It was just all through philosophies developing, trying to build a method or a way of life in a hope that it would work out for us, and none of them did. So this is why they kept it a secret, after seeing that some of the students started to develop in a wrong way, and they didn't want the wisdom to get out, and they only wanted to keep it for those who were really worthy for the wisdom. Until, like I said, humanity was ripe enough and was asking about the meaning of life. This is very important because this wisdom just answers that question and how you can attain it. So, because it's a very, very thin line, they just kept it secret.
Okay, next question. We have Gerald from Liberia.
Yeah.
Gerald says, does Kabbalah differentiate between physical forces and spiritual forces? If so, what is the difference between these two forces?
That's a really nice question as well. We can also find that in the definition here. Bala Islam touches it slightly. When we're talking about a spiritual force, it's a force that we can't really understand or grasp. That's why it's called spiritual, but in Kabbalah what we like to say laws of nature. Simply because the creation, the whole of creation was created in such a way that it functions on laws, and these laws don't change. Nature doesn't break its laws, only humans do. So the wisdom of Kabbalah, really what it wants to teach us is how the laws of nature work and how dysfunctional we are with respect to those laws, and how we can adapt ourselves to those laws and then discover how these forces in nature all act, from gravity to, I don't know, to the moon and sun, everything. In reality, everything is acting according to these laws, and this wisdom is basically going to teach us how we can decipher all that. So we don't like to divide it into spiritual and physical, but what we'd like to say is there are laws in nature which we haven't discovered, and these laws are the laws that Kabbalists did discover and they wrote about, and we'd like to learn from them. So for us, that there shouldn't be anything airy-fairy. Everything should be concrete, and it should be felt inside of us. It should be attained inside of us, and there should be no room for question marks as we attain a higher level of reality. Actually, attaining a higher level of reality is understanding the causes for everything that happens. And because everything that happens must have a reason, otherwise it would just be a mindless creation. If we had things that were just happening randomly, then you could never figure out what the purpose of creation was, because everything is just ad hoc and just havoc. So with the whole wisdom of Kabbalah is a way, it's a teaching that can allow us to understand laws of nature, and then we don't have to differentiate or separate things as spiritual or physical. Spirituality is also it's also an attainment of a law of nature, which we'll learn as we go along as well. Spirituality, in terms of spirituality, we should define that properly, because spirituality, if you look at the world right now, There are apparently, if you ask Google, 4,200 spiritual methods in the world. So many, right? 4,200. And there are 3,800 religions according to account. And, you know, there's no really way of getting out of it. You can't really say, you know, so spirituality has that many definitions according to that many religions and spiritual methods. But spirituality in the wisdom of Kabbalah is actually attaining the attributes of nature, attaining the attributes of the Creator, attaining the thought of creation. And all these definitions, they'll become clearer inside of us. And in a nutshell, what we should direct ourselves towards, not kind of, but we should direct ourselves towards, is to attain the understanding and the thought of creation and the Creator, that force that created everything. That's spirituality for us, to attain the attributes of the Creator so we could come to His level of perception and living, existing there.
Okay, now we have Tony from Ghana. Tony asks, how does Kabbalah relate to astrology?
Astrology was a science from ancient Babylon, and many Kabbalists were known to know that science. In fact, we also know from Abraham, we'll study Abraham as well. He also used to look at the stars and watch the stars. So astrology comes from Babylon. It's where humanity was born as a society. And from that science, many people were studying the laws of nature. They actually understood that we were in a system where things influenced what happened in reality. And they tried to use astrology, and they did use it as a science to determine how to do things and when to do things. And during that period, actually, also we discovered in the Mesopotamia region how agriculture started. The first agricultural revolution, the industry, actually started in Babylon because they were developing these studies towards nature. However, the wisdom of Kabbalah, the science of Kabbalah, does not relate to astrology. It really, really relates to everything that happens from the thought of creation. In the upcoming lessons, hopefully you'll stick around. In the upcoming lessons, I'm going to explain how the whole of reality was created and with what thought behind it was created. So once we discover how this force, this nature or creator, created the whole of reality, what the idea behind it was, and how our world was created, and how in our world we were created, and how we developed through thousands of years to get to this level we're at now. And now we want to discover the meaning of life. Then the wisdom of Kabbalah enters our life and says, listen, the purpose of life is to meet our Creator while living here. And that's what it focuses on, to really discover the Creator while living here, and to understand Him and to exist in His level of existence rather than in this corporeal bodily format that we're living in.
Okay. Now we have, I believe it's Tish from Zimbabwe. Mm-hmm. And the question is, so it's not enough to know and follow the laws of the Creator, but one has to understand the Creator. What does it mean to understand the Creator?
That's a very good question. Absolutely. The whole purpose of life is not just to understand the laws of nature, but we want to attain the Creator. Attaining the Creator, understanding the Creator, means that we need to become like Him. And like I said just a minute ago, in our future lessons, we're going to talk about our human nature. And according to this human nature, how different we are to the whole of nature of creation, and why that oppositeness, this conflict between our nature and the laws of general nature, bring us all the problems in life. So it's not enough just to understand the laws of nature, but for a Kabbalist, he must attain the Creator. He must be like the Creator. So the whole objective of studying the wisdom of Kabbalah is to bring our attributes to the same functionality of His attributes. And that's called being like the Creator, becoming like the Creator. Not the Creator, but becoming like the Creator. Just like as a child grows up, he becomes like his dad or she becomes like her mother. And so the Creator, nature, wants from us to become a perfect being, let's say a perfect creature, and to exist in that perfection. So understanding is not enough in terms of our in terms of intellectually. Understanding in Kabbalah means actually living that state of perfection. Right.
All right.
Okay, good. So we have some nice questions here.
Very good questions.
Okay. So basically, the method is a methodology by which one can attain a higher level of reality. And it's an empirical method. It's a scientific method. It's not a belief. Okay, so one warning straight away. Kabbalah is not a belief. It's not a religion. You don't have to believe what you read. We study. And the study, over time, will open up new feelings and sensations inside of us. Through those experiences that we go through, we'll begin to understand, see, feel. We'll begin to get a vibe from the things that we read in the books, and we'll begin to see as we apply this method that what the books are writing are actually true, because we're going to live what they're talking about. And then you can say, I believe. This is a very important aspect, because a lot of people have grown up in religious environments or in a religious culture, or have some contact with religion. We have a tendency to believe that we need to believe in something. In Kabbalah, we only believe in what we see. And seeing can only happen when I feel, and I then have an understanding for what I felt. And that needs to be true. And once that's true, the understanding and the mind, they connect, and I have a confirmation between them, then we can say I believe, because what a person feels and understands concretely is called truth. Then I can say we believe. Until then, though, please don't mix this wisdom up, because we're talking about the Creator, and sometimes people relate that to God, and it can be called God. It doesn't matter. Let's not get hooked up on the words. Let's get hooked up on the methodology here. So until we see, until we feel and understand, and we go through this inner change, there is no such thing as I believe. Even the Kabbalists, they write, they say, don't believe what we wrote. Once you attain it, then you will believe. So it's a very important topic and a point. So it needs to be a very tangible sensation, not in theory, not intellectually. Just like we live a state of happiness and we understand we're happy, spirituality in the wisdom of Kabbalah is exactly so. Once we go through an inner change, we understand that inner change. We're going through a change in sensation, and there's an understanding accompanying it as the cause and consequence effect. Then we can say we believe. It's a very important aspect.
I know we're running short on time, but we just got another question from Jimmy.
Yeah.
Jimmy from England says, could we do this by creating artwork, for example, or is that too corporeal?
That's going to be a little too corporeal, but if you're good at art, hey, by all means do art. But we need to understand that this wisdom means by applying this wisdom, we're going to learn how to attain the Creator. And it's not going to be through art, but it's going to be really connecting with the whole of reality. And that reality we're going to learn how to discover between the interactions of people.
Okay.
So we still have about half an hour, don't we?
I believe so. I'm
Yes.
not really sure.
We started at
Okay.
10, so we still have about half an hour. So let's, if you don't have questions, we can carry on.
I think we're good.
Okay, let's carry on. So let's take a look at our nature a little bit. Let's take a look at the reason why we become despaired from life. The reason why we're unfulfilled in life. This is a very important topic because that's the whole topic really. Kabbalists, being a good observers of nature and human nature, describe a person, a human being, as a desire to receive pleasure. This is how they define us. We define ourselves as I, me, the human, the intellectual me, or the feeling me. But Kabbalists, being very straightforward guys, say, listen, humans, we're just desiring machines. We, by nature, by default, want things. That's our nature, a desire to receive. And they draw it like a little vessel like this. And all we do in life is want things. This is our nature. And our nature, in their definition, is a desire to receive pleasure. Sometimes we call it a will to receive, a desire to receive, but we want to basically receive pleasure, a desire to receive pleasure. We want to feel fulfilled. We want to feel happy. We want to feel good. This is our nature. And Kabbalists say, well, if this is our nature, then to feel good must be also the purpose of life. It's logical. If I always want to feel good and strive to feel good, well then that really must be a purpose. Feeling good, feeling happy must be a purpose in life. And that's so. So there's a question. Well, in that case, why are we unfulfilled? Why are we not happy all the time? Why do we have moments of happiness and pleasure, and then we have a long period or many unhappy moments or unfulfilled moments or sufferings? If that's our nature, and according to our nature, if that's possibly the purpose of creation, why are we not fulfilled? The most important law of nature all of us need to know and understand is this: the relationship between the desire and the pleasure. This is our desire. Let's say I want something. I don't know, anything. What do you guys want? You guys tell me. Tell me what you guys want, and let's make an example according to your desires. Okay? And this is pleasure. So constantly we want to fulfill the desires that pop up inside of us. And that pleasure, once we fulfill ourselves with pleasure, we feel happy. Don't we, Anthony?
Oh, yes.
Yes? What do you want? Tell me what you want.
You know me, I like food.
Okay, good. All right. So let's say you are hungry.
Yes.
And, okay, so Anthony's desire, what's your favorite food?
Chocolate cake.
Chocolate cake. Okay, so you want chocolate cake. Now, what's the problem with desiring chocolate cake? There's no problem. It's a great desire. I love chocolate myself. So this is the problem. The moment I start to eat that most wanted chocolate cake, the desire and the pleasure begin to cancel each other. So the first bite of the chocolate in my taste buds tastes wonderful. It's great. But the second bite, and then the third bite, and then the fourth bite decreases the pleasure I get from it. So every time I have a desire and I fulfill that desire, the pleasure and the desire, they cancel each other out. So by the time I got my 5th bite or my 4th bite, my taste buds are not really feeling the same chocolate taste as I felt in the first bite. And afterwards, I'm just eating it to finish the chocolate cake. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah?
Yes.
And if I order a second plate of chocolate cake, it's usually in the anticipation that I'm going to get the same pleasure as I did in my first bite because I still remember it. And this is the defect in our nature. The moment I begin to satisfy a desire, the pleasure disappears and the desire disappears as well. Because the moment Anthony starts eating the cake, as the taste starts to decrease, his desire for the chocolate cake also begins to diminish. So by the time he's finished his chocolate cake, he doesn't have the desire for chocolate cake and he doesn't taste it either. So the biggest defect here is that the desire and the pleasure, they cancel each other out. What's the problem with that? Well, it's a big problem. Because we're a desire to be happy, we're a desire to be fulfilled, we now have to find something else to be happy about. And what does that bring you? A life running after a bunch of things that are never going to keep you fulfilled. We just gave a basic example here about chocolate cake. But if you think about anything and everything in life, no matter what I want, I don't know, a shirt, a car, a house, a holiday, it doesn't really matter. The moment I buy what I want, the pleasure I get from it begins to decrease. And this is the problem with our nature. Desire cancels pleasure, pleasure cancels desire, and I end up feeling not just 0, but minus. Why am I in a minus? Because I had to work and make money and run around and go through all the dramas in order to get what I want. So I put a lot of time and effort, maybe stress, because depending on something, you know, let's say you want to buy a car and you want to save up for it, you want to work hard for it, you're running around doing all kinds of things, or you want to advance in your career, let's say. And that's also a desire, right? So I want to progress in my career. I have to put a lot of working hours behind it. I have to really probably get some continuous professional education to really, you know, bust myself for it so I can move up the ladder. So I have to invest a lot. But when I get there, over time, the pleasure from getting there gets less and less and less. And in fact, at that higher level, I begin to get more stressful because I've taken on more load, taken on more responsibility. I have less time for myself. I have to work more, even though I'm higher up the ladder, and I have to deal with more problems and stresses. So things that we seem to do anything from all our desires seems to be just, as we get older and older and older, waste of life. So this defect that constantly makes us run around in life and then makes us feel empty all the time brings us to the question, well, why? Why can we not be fulfilled even though I might have everything I really want? Because there are a lot of people in life, they have everything they want and need, but they still feel unfulfilled. Especially rich people, right? Who goes into therapy more? Rich people. Why? Because they have everything. If you have everything, you don't have a desire for anything, And if you don't have a desire for anything, you don't have a taste for anything. So it becomes a big problem, especially among people who have everything. They become more depressed, sad, and they don't know what to do, because you have the money to do anything and everything, and you don't know what to do with it because you've done everything and you can't feel happy about it. So it's a big problem, and this law of nature we must understand. Because now nature is showing us, by presenting us this dilemma, it's showing us, listen, you want to become happy, that's your nature, and you should. However, you're going around it the wrong way. And life is teaching us that we're going around things the wrong way. So we're looking for fulfillments that are not really going to fulfill us. But because our nature is seeking fulfillment, there must be a fulfillment that's going to give us a constant elevated state. So we need to understand these laws so that we can seek how we need to relate to our nature so that we can find that fulfillment. Because at the end of the day, we want to be happy and we should be happy. And if our nature is actually pushing us to seek happiness, then that's the purpose of life. And we should go about it the right way. And laws of nature, just like these laws of nature that I just explained now, are guiding us. So the wisdom of Kabbalah is going to take us through this labyrinth and it's going to help us, hold us by the hand, so that we can discover, even just knowing this rule already should make you think about what to go after tomorrow and not to go after tomorrow. Okay? It makes us smarter in the sense that we can make better calculations. Any questions there, Anthony? We've got another 20 minutes.
No, so far, no questions.
All right, yeah. Okay. So this method, the wisdom of Kabbalah, can also be defined as the wisdom of how to be happy and fulfilled. If you look at life, what gives us the greatest suffering is not that we're suffering from something, but because we don't know why we're suffering from something. Sometimes children, bang their heads somewhere to a table or to a chair, and then you see them get really upset and agitated, and they start hitting the chair because they don't understand that it's not the chair's fault. You need to learn how to sit properly.
Sometimes adults do that too.
Oh, do they?
Yeah,
I see a lot of people bashing their computers, right? Okay. So a lot of people, okay, let's talk about adults, right? Let's not talk about kids. So adults, a lot of times, they get, something goes wrong with their computer. They start hitting the computer. They're frustrated because it's not because of the frustration of the computer going down. It's because they're in the middle of something and they don't know why that happens. If they knew why the computer had a problem, they wouldn't suffer. They'd go and fix it. They'd understand what the issue was and they'd take care of the problem. So in life as well, when we're going through problems and dramas, our biggest agony is because we don't understand why. And because we don't understand why, we don't know how to relate to it properly. So Kabbalists want to give us a helping hand, and they want to elevate us to a higher level of perception where we can look down to our situation and understand how our life is here. Because let's do another page here. Because if you recall previously I drew this and we said that this is where the roots are, the causes for everything, causes, and the consequences is us living in this world. So all of us here, something happens to us, the causes for it, whatever happens to us, they're all clear here because there's a reason for it. Nothing happens without a purpose. Otherwise it would be a mindless creator and then there's nothing to talk about. But because everything happens for a reason and we don't know why we're suffering, that not knowing is suffering because we feel helpless. We feel like we can't take care of ourselves. In order for us to understand everything that happens to us here, Kabbalists are saying, well, let's go up here and then start looking at life from here. Let's observe from a higher level, and then we can get rid of suffering, because then we know why things happen to us. And this is the whole dilemma. And all of the problems and the unfulfillments, the suffering, the agony, and all that kind of stuff that's happening to us is only to push us. It's only to push us forward so we can seek an answer to all our problems. And then as the lessons go forward, we'll understand how to do that properly. So this is basically this first lesson that we're going through together, is just to understand our place here and how this nature, in a very primitive way, because we're actually very primitive creatures. We want things. If we get them, great. If we don't get them, bad news, we're unhappy. And if we get them, then the pleasure disappears as well, and then we feel like we have to run after something else as well, and then we're in this dog chasing its tail loop, run around. And our whole life goes by like that, and then all of a sudden we get old and die. So we need to, through this study, through this wisdom, elevate ourselves to a new observation point where we can begin to decipher everything and live a conscious life. And then, even if we die, because we're living at a conscious higher level of existence, then our body just becomes like a shirt we're wearing. It doesn't matter if it stays or not, because it doesn't affect our existence. And this is the main idea, that to make our lives permanent, in a really permanent, non-ending, a person has to attain that higher level of existence. Because our body is at the level of an animal. It's not a human. It's an animal. Animals have bodies as well. We're just a little smarter, so we think we're special. In fact, we're not special at all. Animals have a much better life in their environment than we do. You don't see animals taking drugs, getting into depression, throwing themselves off the bridge and committing suicide. But humans do. They're having a much better life than we are. So in this sick animal kind of life that we have, we need to raise ourselves to a real state called human. And that state of human that many of the books talk about is that elevated state of existence. All right. No more questions? We're all going there?
No questions?
Okay,
no.
Good. If you have any questions, feel free. So how do you know if this wisdom is for you or not? That's another question. I guess you'll discover it as the lessons go on, and then you begin to feel whether you're really, whether this wisdom is for you or not. But there are a few things to take into consideration if you feel this is for you. And because we're sensual creatures, we need to start observing what we feel. And we should start doing that on day one. Because we're educated and grown up in an intellectual way. Everybody's talking about how smart we are, and but that's actually a wrong way to educate a child. Because we're sensual beings, we need to first feel things and then develop our intellectual ability to comprehend what we're going through, so that there's a parallel matching between what we feel and what we understand. So all those understandings of the sensations that we go through are the things that actually make us smart. By reading books and not living anything, I can't actually become smart. Imagine learning how to swim from a book. You never learn to swim, but according to the book, you know how to swim. So really not going to make you a swimmer, is it? So the way we need to educate ourselves as well is to start to get a feeling as we study if this is a good sensation inside of us. A lot of people ask, well, why should I study Kabbalah? Do I even need a higher level of reality? A lot of people ask that. Well, I just want to be happy in this world. Do I need to attain a higher level of existence? If you want to be just happy living in this world, that's great. This wisdom then can actually show you the laws of nature. And when you choose, you can actually choose smartly, because then you know what makes you happy and what doesn't make you happy. The whole idea of the wisdom is actually to show and educate a person about how his or her nature is working. And if we understand how it's working, then we can actually be happy. Isn't that correct? So it helps us being fulfilled and happy while living in this world. And for those who are really obsessed about attaining something beyond this world, it also helps to raise to that higher level as well. So it'll help everyone, both in this life and to actually go beyond the borders of this life in terms of our perception as well. And it all boils down to understanding the laws of nature and human nature. So as time goes by, as we go to the next lesson, because next lesson we're going to touch on the perception of reality, and then we're going to touch on many topics about how the whole reality was created and the timeline of creation. It's also very interesting as well, because if you think about it, we're going to discover how everything in its creation and its explanations from Kabbalists have a timeline. So that chain of Kabbalists we'll get to discover. But let's read something else as well. Once again, from Bala Sulam. And a lot of times people say, well, who can study Kabbalah? Can I study Kabbalah? You know, because there are a lot of things out there on the internet. Some people say, well, can I study before I'm the age of 40? Can I study if I'm not Jewish? Okay, I'm not Jewish. I'm teaching it. I'm teaching it to everyone, to Jews, Christians, Muslims, atheists, anyone. And Anthony, you're Jewish, right? Mm-hmm. Anthony is Jewish, but I'm not Jewish. But as you can see, we're studying.
And he was my teacher.
Yeah, and I was his teacher as well. There you go. So who can study Kabbalah? Let's take a look what the Kabbalists say. Once again, from the writings of Bala Sulam. In this book, it's on page 315, and the article is called Introduction to the Study of the 10 Sefirot. And the 10 Sefirot book is actually Bala Sulam's writings about the Tree of Life. So it's a very fundamental, hardcore Kabbalistic book. And he says, on item 2 on page 315, indeed, if we set our hearts to answer but one very famous question, I'm certain that all these questions and doubts will vanish from the horizon, and you will look unto their place to find them gone. This indignant question is a question that the whole world asks, namely, what is the meaning of my life? So who can study Kabbalah? Well, it's anyone seeking the meaning of his life. As we progress, you'll also see that it's a very solid, very sensed, basically lived experience. You really feel it on yourself when you're going through many of the states that they're talking about. That it's really a wisdom for a person who wants to really understand the meaning behind everything, the purpose of life, why one is not happy, how one can be happy, and those are really the secrets of life, and those are the things that many of us are missing. And because we miss those things, you can see humanity is always in a turmoil, constant problems all the time in society, family, between countries. It's just a big dilemma that we're all going through. Yes.
Now I know this time we are really running short on time, but I have a few more questions that just came in.
Okay.
And they are really good questions. One of them is coming from Jimmy from England. Mm-hmm. Jimmy says, the roots are the thoughts from the mind of the Creator, and the consequences, the reality formed from those ideas. Is that right? Question.
Yeah, Jimmy from England. Yeah, we could say that, Jimmy, because life has a purpose. Just like an apple grows on a tree, becomes mature, becomes a ripe fruit, and tastes great. But when it's first forming, it's very bitter. And life has a purpose for us as well. So from that bitter first initial formation of the apple until it becomes a nice, juicy, ripe fruit, it has to go through phases. And so humanity is also going through those phases at an individual level and at a societal level as well, the whole world together. And all of that is stemming from the thought of creation. So humanity is progressing through the thought of the Creator, where this force wants to bring us to a ripe, juicy, good tasting state, basically. Yeah.
Okay, we have Dora from Spring, Maryland, USA. And Dora says, does Kabbalah address the concept of reincarnation? What is the position about reincarnation in this teaching? And can you talk about the concept of reincarnation?
Reincarnation is a hot topic, but we have to understand reincarnation when we go through the structure of the soul. Because reincarnation and Kabbalah, you might relate it to the reincarnation that's discussed out there from when a person dies, does he or she come back in another body and carry on living? That's called reincarnation. In Kabbalah, reincarnation has a different twist to it. And we can only really talk about it, which we will, in the structure of the soul. So, yeah, it's a good topic to talk about. Thank you for the question. We'll discuss it in the upcoming lessons. So stick around. They're going to be in this 10-lesson course that we're going to do. Definitely.
And Tony from Ghana, he says, is it possible for humans like us to reach above the red line? Tony, can you elaborate on the red line?
The red line is here.
Oh, okay.
That's the red line.
Sorry about that.
The thin red line, yes, it is. Actually, that's the purpose of creation. It's like a baby being born, and it's a little baby. And if somebody was observing, let's say, from Mars, and this was the first time he was looking at humanity, he'd say, what's going to happen to this baby? You know, it can't look after itself, constantly needs looking after. But as time goes by, we see that a baby grows up, becomes an intelligent being that's able to take care of his or her life in this world by him or herself. So just like a baby can, from a helpless state, can grow up to become something that takes care of itself and even others when it grows up, same with us. From the level of this world, we need to come and we need to grow. That's the purpose of creation. We need to grow to that level where we actually become a participant in the whole of creation, with just like the Creator is ruling. Otherwise, there would be no point. Imagine our kids constantly staying at the age of 5. They'd drive us crazy.
Yes.
Okay, that's right. They drive us absolutely nuts. So we're willing to go through a short period of, craziness, but as we grow them up, we understand that they're going to take care of themselves, they're going to participate in society, and hopefully they'll become a positive aspect, a positive part of society, and will contribute. So the Creator also wants us to grow and become like Him, just like we'd love our kids to grow up and become even better than us. So the Creator also has that thought for us, and we'll come to discuss that in later lessons as well. This right now, we're just touching the topic right now, getting to know each other, and breaking this shyness with all these questions and so on. But as we develop and go through, you'll see that all these questions are very much answered. They're very nice questions on lesson 1. Guys, feel free to ask questions. It's very important, and this is also making my life very easy as well, because when you ask questions, I feel a bit more relaxed, and then I can give the lesson in a more happy kind of relaxed way. So feel free to interact and ask all your questions. I've just got one more paragraph to read, once again from the Wisdom of Kabbalah and Philosophy by Bala Sulam. It's also on in this green book. The article, The Wisdom of Kabbalah and Philosophy, page 99. Understanding the meaning of the word spirituality has nothing to do with philosophy. This is because how can they discuss something that they have never seen or felt? This is because, and what do their rudiments stand on? If there is any definition that can tell spiritual from corporeal, it belongs only to those who have attained a spiritual thing and felt it. These are the genuine Kabbalists. This is a very good article to read as well, because sometimes people confuse Kabbalah with philosophy. A Kabbalist is a person who genuinely attains the attribute called the Spirit, which is the attribute of the Creator. Until one attains that, lives inside of that, any other definition of spirituality is philosophical, something we don't go into. Let's read that again. Understanding the meaning of the word spirituality has nothing to do with philosophy. This is because how can they discuss something that they have never seen or felt? What do their rudiments stand on? If there is any definition that can tell spiritual from corporeal, it belongs only to those who have attained a spiritual thing and felt it. These are the genuine Kabbalists. Underline the word genuine Kabbalists. A lot of people out there go out and call themselves Kabbalists. You want to find out who's genuine? Ask them what sources they're studying. And ask them about the lineage of their teachers, because Kabbalists have a lineage which they can go back to. So we need to discuss all their teachers, what books their teachers wrote, what articles their teachers wrote. So all these things are very important. Right, I do believe it's 11:30 and we're coming to the end of the lesson. If there are any unanswered questions, don't worry, write them down. In fact, you should have a notebook for yourself so you can write things down. And then if any questions pop up, you can ask them later on. And then what we're going to do is we can go over those questions in the next lesson as well. So I hope this lesson gave you a bit of a clear-cut definition and the direction that we're going to go about the wisdom of Kabbalah, and how we're going to move forward. And if that's not clear still, we'll have enough time to discuss all your questions about what Kabbalah is and how we're going to study it. So we'll go into all those. In a nutshell, basically what we wanted to say in this lesson was Kabbalah is a way, a method, an empirical science that we can use in order to attain the purpose of creation, which is to understand the Creator and to live at that level of existence, and to understand everything about our nature, the laws of nature, and why everything happens the way it does in our reality in this world. That's all. So no red strings, no holy water, no black magic or mysticism or doing yoga with Hebrew letters according to Kabbalah. None of that, but solid understanding about our life here and how we need to bring it to a higher level of existence. Right here then. I hope that was all good for you. We've certainly enjoyed being with you, and hopefully we'll see you in the next lesson next Tuesday. All the best.
Have a great night.
All the best. Bye now.